Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and I'm very excited to tell you about my experience with the eufyMake UV Printer E1. It's one of the most unexpected and impressive machines that I have reviewed in a while. Think of it almost like a standard colored inkjet printer that you probably have at your home, but instead of printing on only paper, it can print on almost any type of hard flat surface. Not only that, it can also print your image in layers of up to 5 millimeters high, so you can give it a 3D look and feel. My system also came with a really easy to use and accurate rotary tool for things like tumblers and mugs, as well as a UV direct to film or DTF laminating machine for being able to print on film and then transfer it into something that doesn't fit into the machine. The machine also has automatic height measuring lasers as well as a camera for accurate placement of your art. So how does it work? And what have I been able to make with the machine so far? Well, let's find out. First, I wanted to say, at the time of the filming of this review, this product is currently entering its Kickstarter campaign, so the machine that I've been testing is a pre-release version, although I'm being told it matches the retail machine. The machine also was provided for me by the company for my review, but any opinions within are my own and are not vetted by the company. There will also be an affiliate link in the video description if you decide to back the project or are seeing this later on for the regular retail release. I also wanted to point out that Eufy is a division of the Anker brand that you may be familiar with. I have portable battery chargers, computer dongles, power strips, as well as Bluetooth keyboards and more that I already personally purchased from this brand. I only mention it if you happen to be nervous about backing a project from a company you might not recognize, as Anker has been around for quite a while and even recently came out with their own 3D printer. So with that out of the way, let's get started on this machine. Before I even get into the unboxing, I wanted to explain exactly what this machine is and how it does it. When I first got an email to review a UV printer, I assumed they were talking about a resin 3D printer. However, while it's similar in concept using light to cure resin, it works in a completely different way. Instead of the resin being poured into a vat and cured layer by layer on an SLA 3D printer, the resin in the eufyMake is divided into 6 different ink cartridges, representing the familiar CMYK colors of cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. These would be colors you're familiar with from your standard home inkjet printer. There is also a cartridge in there for white resin, which is needed since, unlike in a regular inkjet printer where you typically print on white paper, this printer can print on almost anything, so you will need to print the white as well. The last cartridge is actually a clear gloss in case you want to give your piece that extra shine. So as the printer is printing, it will move the print head from side to side just like a standard inkjet printer, spraying down the resin in the proper colors, while at the same time hitting that resin with a UV light. This immediately cures that resin, making it permanent and safe to the touch right as it comes out of the printer. You can't smudge it once it's done, and since the resin is completely cured instantly, it allows for the print head to do another pass on top of it if you choose to do that. This is how you get that embossed or 3D buildup all the way up to 5 millimeters thick. The printer came well packaged and was very simple to unbox. You simply remove some Velcro straps and lift the box. Inside the printer itself, there is another box that holds the power supply and cord, an Allen wrench that, to be honest, I have not found a use for yet, some ceramic magnet tiles for testing the machine, as well as some UV protective glasses when working with the machine open, and finally a filter to help remove some of the odor from the resin that I'll talk about in a little bit. I also received a box with all of the ink cartridges that I talked about before, as well as another cartridge that I haven't mentioned before, and that is what Eufy calls the Jet Clean self-cleaning system. How this works is that the printer runs a cleaning strategy based on the usage of the machine, meaning based on how often you use this machine, the printer will employ different techniques on how to keep the machine in working order. This honestly was the one thing that had kept me from trying out other types of DTF printers in the past, and that was that if it was not something you were going to be using every day, there was a lot of manual maintenance that went into those machines when it came to their ink, which kept me away. This is different as it's all done automatically by the machine itself with the help of the Jet Clean system. With the machine in the regular home setting, the machine will do what is called a flash cleaning every hour. This ejects a tiny amount of ink through the holes of each nozzle to prevent it from clogging. This will happen every hour after the first hour of being on. After the machine has been on for a full 24 hours, the machine will run what is called a basic cleaning. This uses the ink pump inside the Jet Clean system to pull slightly larger but still small amounts of ink into the system, which is then flushed through the nozzles to keep them clear. If the machine has been idle for 3 days, then the Jet Clean will use a moisturizing cleaning solution that was in the cartridge to flush the system out and then put the entire system into a sleep mode. This means that you would actually need to keep this powered for periodic uses or manually run the deep clean cycle if you wanted to turn the machine off for an extended period of time. Just keep in mind that this cleaning cartridge and the fluid inside is also a consumable, so it would need to be replaced like the ink cartridges. So back to the installation, I plugged in the power and turned the machine on. I let it run through its start cycle, and then I opened up all the bags with the individual colored resins and installed them into the top in their appropriate spots. A light in front of each cartridge lets you know if you have them installed correctly. I then replaced the top cover. I also wanted to mention here that the machine will not function without that top cover installed, which I found out the hard way. There is a magnetic hall sensor installed that stops the machine as soon as you remove it. I'll show you that failure in a minute. With the ink installed, it was now time to install the Jet Clean system on the side of the machine. I opened the box it came in, took out the sealed package, and then following the instructions it came with, I opened the side of the machine, removed the red silicone protectors on the connectors inside, and installed the cartridge in the machine. That's it. It's pretty easy. After that, I placed the self-adhesive mat on the small flatbed that was already installed in the machine. If you need to, you can remove it to make this easier by unlocking it with the switch on the front. Pull the bed out and peel the plastic off of the back of the adhesive mat. Do not peel the paper off of the front. This will be used for the calibration in a moment. I also highly recommend keeping this plastic as it can be used to cover the mat to keep it dust-free when the machine is not in use. With that now installed, you can put the flatbed back and lock it into place with the lever. The last bit of setup was to install the filter in the front of the machine. I pulled off the front panel and installed the filter. This is also a HEPA charcoal consumable filter that will need to eventually be replaced as well. So with everything installed, it was time to start using the machine. The eufyMake can either be controlled using a smartphone or an application on your computer. I started off using it with my iPhone. Now again, this is a very early version of the machine, so I had to install an unreleased version of the software. So the retail version might be a little bit different, so just keep that in mind when following along. I first selected a wireless connection as my version did not come with a wire to hook it up. I then connected to it via Bluetooth, and once it was found, I pressed the button on the machine to initialize it. I then connected the machine to my home network as well, so I could run jobs from my PC over Wi-Fi. After that, I could select a name for the printer, and then it told me that there was a new firmware for the printer, so I allowed that to run on the machine as well. Right after that, the machine ran through its calibration. Keep in mind that it does take a good 15 to 20 minutes to fully pull the ink into the system for the first time. This is also the case after you run one of those deep cleaning procedures that I mentioned before. Once ready to print, it will want to run a test print to first make sure everything is running smoothly. It will print these test pattern lines that will let you know which colors are working. The software then asks which lines were not working properly, and then went through a process of cleaning those colors to try to see if I could print it. I actually went through this process a few times because it kept showing me, especially on the black, that I had broken lines. After a few different cleaning cycles with the gaps still in the print lines, I decided to move ahead anyway and found that the printer is still functioned perfectly even with those gaps, so I'm not sure if I even needed to run multiple cleanings after all. After that, the printer will print a test pattern on the paper to help with the camera calibration of the machine. You will need to run this again when you switch over to the larger standard plate to make sure that your camera calibration is still in sync. Once complete, you can then remove the paper from the print bed. The surface has a tacky surface to help hold on to your parts. Think of it like those old photo album books where you would peel the cellophane back and stick a photo to the tacky surface. Once the calibration was complete, the app gave me some choices of a first project that I could make with the printer using some of those ceramic magnets that came with the machine. I chose this Statue of Liberty image, which looked cool. I then placed my magnet on the flatbed and allowed the printer to go through its automatic height, and it gave me an image of the machine in the app. I then adjusted the image to fit and then sent it to the printer to print. The last step is pressing the button on the top and the printer goes to work. Now, at this point, the bed moves very close to the print head, so it's not very easy to see what's happening with the printer as it works. Also keep in mind, if you're staring at this light, it's a class UVC light working at a peak 395 nanometers, so it's not something you want to stare at, which is why they give you those UV glasses with the kit. Honestly, it's hard to see what's going on there, so there's no reason to even try, so I would just keep the door closed whenever you can. However, being curious to see if I could see what was going on inside the machine, I opened the top panel to see if I could get a better view to show you guys, and the machine stopped. The machine will not work with that top panel removed. I believe that I should have been able to resume that print job after it was closed, but either through my own fault or a bug in this beta software, I wasn't able to continue the job. However, this presented a good look into what was happening with the print. The particular job was one of those embossed or 3D prints where certain sections stuck out more than others. Here you can see almost a cross-section of what it was printing. You can tell that it is printing the depth of the art in white while keeping the colors for the topmost layers of the image. I went ahead and printed another one so you could see the entire thing completed, and it turned out great. It's so impressive to see the depth of this image pop out, and this is probably only a millimeter or so, but it really makes the design look and feel great. Like I mentioned before, it is immediately dry the second it's done. I can take it out and handle it right away without any fear of smudging anything. Since the machine was hooked up to my phone, it also sent me a notification that it was done. After that, I printed an image that I have used with many of my laser engravers before, and that was one of my wedding pictures. Now, I have made this with all sorts of lasers in the past, but obviously nothing comes close to being able to print it in full color. I even printed it on the same type of tile that I had previously lasered on, and now it makes the laser engraving look absolutely terrible. Another thing that I recommend doing when you are printing on the full surface of something is to put down masking tape so you don't overspray onto the workbed. The issue is that, especially if you're doing a 3D print, all of that artwork that falls off of the edge of the surface can build up and potentially make for an uneven surface of the bed, which could affect printing later. The company does sell replacement bed adhesion stickers, but it's not a bad idea to prolong those beds as long as possible. I also again keep the plastic that I took off of the back of the cover for the bed when it's not in use to keep dust and other junk from getting to it. Next, I wanted to try to print on a brass coin. I have engraved a bunch of brass coins in the past, but wanted to do something a little bit different. So using the software on my PC to convert the picture of Buster with some AI functions in the program, I put together a coin for my daughter. On one side I had a simple image, but on the other side I wanted to play a little bit with the depth that this machine could produce. What I did was take some text and separate out the background into another layer using Photoshop. Then I could bring both the text and the background on different layers and choose the settings that apply to each layer. So here in the program, if I select the layer and choose the back layer, I can see over here on the right that it's set to flat. If I select the top layer, which happens to be the text, you can see over here on the right, I have it set to flat raise and pick the amount that I wanted it raised, which was 0.5 millimeters. If you want to see what this will look like, you can click a preview here at the bottom and it will show you a 3D rendering of your design. On this one, it's a bit far away since it's so small, but you can get the idea. You can also adjust the amount of the bump using the slider at the top. The coin came out great and it really does pop on the surface. So far, it has been able to withstand the abuse of my daughter carrying around the coin. After that, I had this portable battery pack that I had used for testing with fiber lasers, but it wasn't all that successful at it. I was even thinking of recycling it since it looked so bad. However, I wanted to see if I could use the eufyMake to bring it back to life. On one side, I printed a screen grab from my logo animation, and I made sure to print it in a little thicker than just the regular printing to cover the burn that was on the battery. On the other side, I used AI to make a weathered American flag. And then on this one, I used the relief texture function in the software that looks at the image and uses AI to create depth in the image. Now, this seems to be a function of the software, much like some of the other AI functions that seems to require a subscription to use these tools. I really wish that it was not the case, as it seems like this is such a cool part of the machine and the software to make those 3D prints, but this function seems to require that you pay the subscription fee. There is also a free tier that does give you 20 AI credits to start, but honestly, I'm not sure if that's per month or just once they are gone, they're gone. Now you can still manually add height to your prints like I showed before with the coin, but this is the way to automatically generate that with AI. When you look at this image, I can rub my fingers across and feel the waves in the flag. It came out great and really brought this battery charger back to life. Another odd thing that I wanted to try was to bring one of my old key fobs back to life. As you can see, the one on the right has been well used to the point where all of the paint on the plastic has been rubbed away over the years. On the left was what it looked like brand new from the spare I kept in my closet as an emergency backup. So what I did was take a picture of the key fob in the software using the camera in the machine, and then use that as kind of a template to add the design back to the key fob. I made this design in Photoshop and then printed it right onto the surface. It might have been a little off on the color, but overall I was really happy with how it turned out. I again might also have been slightly off on the fit, but if you remember what this looked like before, this is a significant improvement. Next, I wanted to print on a 3D print that I use as the cover of my electronics on my Buster Beagle 3D MK4 injection molding machine. In the past, I've simply 3D printed this cover in multiple colors on my 3D printer, but that takes more time and you're limited by how small details it can be. However, with the eufyMake, I can print in any color I want, and more importantly, even the smallest details. I would have never tried to 3D print the words select and reset on these buttons. It would have simply been too small and not printed correctly. One thing to keep in mind, and it became an issue on the second 3D print I tried to print on, is that the UV light does generate some heat while printing, so you want to be careful about printing on too thin of a 3D print, as they may warp. This happened to me when I tried to print one of my favorite pictures of my girls on the back of a HueForge that I printed on my 3D printer. If you have never looked into HueForges, it's basically a really cool way to print in different colors using a 3D printer. It's one of my favorite things to do with 3D printers, but this eufyMake again takes that to a different level. However, since I was printing over the entire surface and the 3D print was not that thick to begin with, it really warped the 3D print in the machine. I had also printed at a higher resolution, so it meant it took longer and was in contact with the UV light for longer, so the surface did bow up. I was able to somewhat flatten it, and in the end it still looked great, but that might be certainly something to keep an eye out for. I kinda wish I picked something other than my HueForge to print on, but it still looks great on both sides. To do that larger image, I had to install the larger bed of the eufyMake. While the smaller bed is good for things up to 330 millimeters by 87 millimeters, the larger bed can print up to 330 millimeters by 420 millimeters, or about 13 by 16.5 inches. This really increases the size of the things that you can print on. However, when printing with the larger standard bed, I need to talk a little bit about the smell that you can get while printing. When using a smaller bed, you really don't smell too much with the doors on the back and the front of that machine closed. The internal filter does a pretty good job reducing those odors. With the standard larger plate in place, you really are going to want to use this in a place with some good ventilation to be able to reduce some of those smells. While it's certainly not as excessive as something like an SLA 3D printer, there is still an odor that comes from the printer when it's open, so if you're more sensitive to those kind of smells, you're going to want to do something to mitigate that. With the new larger bed in place, you are going to want to recalibrate the cameras to make sure everything is still aligned. I printed some images on some canvases. Here is one of my family at Convict Lake near Mammoth here in California about a month ago. And here is one of my girls at Sunset in Hawaii. So far, I've actually printed up 7 canvases, mostly of friends that I'm not going to show on camera because they are of their families, but I only bring that up to talk about just how much ink seems to be in those cartridges. There's something in the software that is supposed to track the amount of ink that you are using, but at the time this video was produced, that is still in the works somewhat. To be honest, I don't really have any idea how much ink I still have left at this time. When the software is released to the public, I'm assuming that this will be more functional at that time. Another attachment that you can get to use with this machine is the rotary for things like tumblers and mugs. I have to say that this may be the easiest rotary that I've ever used, and I've used quite a few in my laser engraving over the years. The rotary attaches to the bed just like the other print beds do. You simply put it down on the bed and lock it into place. Then you put your cup into the machine and fit by sliding the plate until it pushes back on the little metal wheel on the back. On the inside of the cup, you slide the bearing into it and hold it in place. In the software, you should have the rotary selected as the print bed and then click on Auto Measure. You choose the shape of the cup and then hit Auto Measure. The eufyMake will automatically measure the height of the cup and auto-rotate to the angle of the cup until the top is level with the print head. It honestly cannot be any more simple than that. Then you are free to add your design to the work area, and when you are happy with it, you can click on Preview and see exactly what it will look like on the cup. Just send it off and you're golden. It really works great, and the cup turned out fantastic. After the cup, I wanted to print on a water bottle, and I thought it'd be cool to do a graphical version of my Corvette in front of a sunset. So using AI tools in the software, I told it to generate a 1979 Corvette in a side profile in front of a graphical beach sunset with palm trees. I ended up doing a few prompts that I liked, and then I went into Photoshop once I had a bunch of those images, and I put it into a design that I really liked. I also once again split the design into different layers so that I could add different heights to the different elements to really make it pop, even on a water bottle. The rotary comes with some extra magnetic components that you can add to the wheels to be able to add some of these larger cylinders that might not fit on the standard size wheels. They just magnetically snap into the current wheels. There is then an extended bearing that screws onto the other bearing to hold the water bottle from the inside. After it was installed, I auto-measured the cup, added my design, and printed it. It came out amazing. And again, since I added different heights to the design, I can feel the difference when I hold it. I have used this water bottle for a few weeks, even taking it on a trip to Sequoia National Park, and it has been in and out of cup holders and backpacks, and it still looks like the day I printed it. It's really impressive. So next, I really wanted to challenge the measuring of the lasers on the machine. I wanted to try to do a full wrap on a water bottle. I placed the same water bottle that I used before, and then added the image that should have reached completely around the water bottle and then meet on the other side. This was how it came out. It was really close, but off by just about 1 millimeter. Now you can also manually add your dimensions for the diameter of the cup, which would have given me the perfect wrap, but it's still pretty close for an automatic process, especially if you're not doing a full wrap. Next, I wanted to make a mug. You can use any mug as long as their handle doesn't protrude more than 50 millimeters out from the surface of the mug. Another consideration here is that you have to keep the design at least 40 millimeters or about 1.5 inches away from the handle to make sure that the print head does not collide with it. This could be an issue if your design is larger and you wanted to keep it at a 90-degree angle to the handle, like most designs on mugs would be. To add a mug into the rotary, you have to place it with the handle facing down so the sensor can record where the handle is. I printed another AI-generated image on a stainless steel mug, and it turned out really nice. I wish I had made it a little bit smaller to not curve around the bottom of the cup, but even then it printed fine around the bend. Again, you can see that the design is not at a 90-degree angle to the handle, as it had to be over and away from that handle. I tried printing on a ceramic mug, which again turned out fantastic. There was a tiny issue that I saw where I was trying to keep the design as close to the 90-degree angle to the handle that I pushed it over too far until it didn't print part of the design. You may have to give yourself a tiny bit of room extra from what they show the non-printable area of a mug, as it looks like I was off by about 0.5 millimeter. Also, with the rotary, you are limited to the type of things that you can print on. The cup either needs to be a straight taper or a straight cylinder. You can't print directly on things that have odd shapes to them, like those large Stanley cups that can be printed on if they're under 100 millimeters in diameter, but you would only be able to print on the top half and not on the bottom half. You can, however, do that another way, and that is what I'm going to talk about next, and that is printing direct to film. Direct to film, or DTF, is a process where you essentially print a sticker or a decal that can then be added to any hard surface. Unlike regular DTF machines that print with a water-based ink, this printer is UV resin based, which is harder, so even if you do print on film with this machine, it's still not suitable for things like cloth or other super soft objects. So to make the decals, I used some of these paper-backed adhesive sheets provided for me with the printer. I added the smaller bed back and then peeled away the plastic on the top to expose the adhesive. I then printed directly onto the surface with the sticker setting in the software. This printed flawlessly as I expected it would. With decals, you are also limited to only printing flat and are not allowed to add any depth to these. The company also provided me with a UV laminating machine, and what this does is heat and roll the sticker onto a piece of plastic that will allow you to transfer that design onto whatever you want. Here I added my Corvette design onto a clamshell for a digital microscope. It came out amazing and really pops on that surface. When I was talking about mugs or glasses that were odd shaped, this is where you can also transfer those designs to something that couldn't be automatically printed on with the machine. I took my Buster decal and added it to this curvy shaped glass. Now I ended up screwing this up since I was trying to film at the same time, but what happened here was that as I was putting the decal down, I borked up a little bit, and this little crease was in the top that I chipped away as I was pressing the design down. So you can see that little thing on the top left here. I screwed up, but what impressed me was that I was trying to chip away more here, and it was really hard to do, so that rest of the design is really on there. If I had not messed this up, it would have turned out to be a really nice piece as well. So that's really it. I have to say that overall, this is one of the most impressive and unexpected machines that I have used in a while. If I had to choose some sort of cons, it would be the odor that comes from the device when you have the doors open. But again, with good ventilation, you should be fine. The only thing that I'm a little disappointed about, again, is that some of the cool features like the AI generated content and the 3D relief functions are behind a points-based subscription, which I'm seeing more and more these days, which is not great, but it's not unheard of either, and it's really not that expensive. As far as pros, we have been seeing them this whole video. With laser engravers, we're often trying to create something as close to photoreal detail on things as possible, and what is more detailed and photoreal than a color photo? Now, I'm not saying that this completely replaces laser engraving, but it's a really cool alternative and even complementary to a laser engraver. I can imagine cutting out wood with a laser and then printing a design right on it. I can't wait to see what else I get to do with this machine. Once again, I wanted to thank eufyMake for reaching out for me to test this machine. There will be affiliate links in the video description that do help out the channel if you decide to use them, but do not sway my opinion on the machine one way or the other. Thanks again for watching, and if you made it this far and enjoyed the video, please do hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content having to do with laser engraving, 3D printing, injection molding, UV printing, and all things maker. I might even do another video on the software after the full version is released to go over more cool features in there. Thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.